valuable knowledge, one must endure disturbing experiences, and in this process they gain independence and lose their innocence. Throughout the novel Life of Pi by Martel, there are many themes that should be considered. However, the most prominent one is the loss of innocence. It is frequently considered when a child actually loses their innocence. It greatly depends on the child's upbringing and amount of freedom they are given. Innocence is essentially the lack of knowledge of the real world resulting in ignorance. For that reason, a child loses their innocence once they gain knowledge of true evil in the world. From almost the beginning of the novel, Pi begins to lose his innocence. This is evident in the passage from pages 23 to 27 when Pi is only 8 years old and his father decides it's time for him and his brother to understand the true danger of animals in the zoo. The author uses literary devices to further emphasize the experience Pi endures, as well as using the scene to add to the character's development in the novel. Also foreshadowing the future event of Pi stuck on a boat for 227 days. Even though this passage is the beginning of when Pi loses his innocence as a child, the theme grows onward throughout the novel. Literary devices in the passage further expand Pi's thoughts and emphasizes his experience even more. Repetition is used throughout 2 pages to stress how dangerous the animals in the zoo really are. Pi's father tells the 2 boys interesting and frightening new information about the animals they've grown to love, to essentially shock them into realizing the real danger of them. Each time the boys are to respond to their father, they respond with, "Yes, father." By repeating this, it is drilling not only in the boy's mind the threat of the animals, but also in the reader's mind. This is similar to the novel The Great Gatsby, where Gatsby repeats "old sport" continuously within 4 pages of the novel. This phrase is a paradox that stresses to the reader both new and old. This is similar to the boys' response that represents obedience and their new form of understanding as they realize the true evil living in their backyard. Similes are also included in the passage to further expand Pi's thoughts during this experience. Before Pi understands what lesson his father is trying to teach him and his brother, he describes the walk through the zoo of that of pure cruelty, explaining that they were set off like prisoners to their execution. This can be found on page 24. So this statement stresses Pi's true innocence due to the fact walking to your death and walking through a zoo is really incomparable. This means Pi doesn't understand much about the real world other than what he's been told or what he's read. Furthermore, this sentence stresses the mood, which is that of terrifying. An 8-year-old boy comparing this experience to that of death means Pi was petrified to the point he felt like this was the end for him. As well as expanding the experience in Pi's internal thoughts, this passage develops the character's traits even more. So in this passage, you finally begin to read the characters talking between each other, and with this is when we learn greater knowledge of their personalities. So until this point, you never hear much about Pi's parents, other than the fact that they don't like swimming, which was stated earlier in the novel, and are left wondering what they could be like until now. So from the start of the passage, you learn that Pi's mother is completely against this lesson, so to speak. It states that she asks if this is really necessary, as well as Pi wondering why she was there, thinking to himself that this is unusual. And that can be found on page 23. This generates in the reader's mind that Pi's father is the authority figure in the family, since his mother's presence in the scene that he suspects is going to result in discipline is uncommon. By Pi's mother asking Pi's father if this is really necessary instead of stating this is not necessary, it further stresses her position in the household, which is above the children, although below Pi's father. This is similar to the play Hamlet, which we just read last week, where the king has all control over the nation, and the queen is essentially on the sidelines of any decisions. Much like the queen in Hamlet, Pie's mother doesn't have a large say in the decisions made in the household. Later in the passage, we realize this lesson is about teaching the boys the danger of a tiger. Thus, a goat is put in the same cage as the tiger to teach the boys how unforgiving it can be. So during this experience, not only are the boys trembling, but also Pie's mother, and this is seen on page 24. So this action concludes that Pie's mother is gentle and kind-hearted for not being able to view the gruesome scene in front of her. Pie's mother is much like Katniss's mother in the novel The Hunger Games, due to the fact Katniss would scare her mother by saying bad things about their district, which is District 12. Although the scenarios are different, both passages prove that the mothers are tender and caring. Furthermore, this quotation develops the mood, which I earlier stated that it is terrifying, through this passage even more. In addition to developing Pie's mother in the novel, this passage foreshadows future events in the novel. So, characters' remarks towards Pie foreshadow his future event of living on a boat for 227 days with Richard Parker the tiger. The lesson of never touching the tiger leads the reader wondering why this was included in the novel, essentially questioning the importance of this passage. Pie's father says to him and his brother, "You are never, under any circumstances, to touch a tiger," and this is found on page 24. This simple statement is foreshadowing that eventually one of the characters will touch the tiger, since the father emphasizes under any circumstances. This forces the reader to wonder in what circumstance someone would want to touch a tiger or have to. This is comparable to the play Romeo and Juliet, when Juliet foreshadows her own fate when she says that if Romeo is married, she will die unmarried, because she will never marry another. Unknowingly, Juliet's statement later becomes true when her grave becomes her wedding bed at the end of the play. In both cases, the quotations are leaving the audience to wonder if they will later become true and force the reader to keep reading to find out. At the end of the passage, Ravi's statement to Pie about the experience leads the reader to believe Pie will eventually become the goat. Ravi says to Pie, "Just wait till we're alone, you're the next goat," and this is on page 27. Although Ravi only says this to Pie because Pie tried to blame Ravi for what he thought his father was mad at them for, it later becomes true, because later in the novel, Pie does become like the goat stuck on a boat with Richard Parker. The author includes these quotations to add dramatic tension to the story by building anticipation about what might happen next. This passage adds suspense to the novel and grabs the reader's attention by foreshadowing that Pie will eventually be like the goat and forced to disobey his father and touch the tiger. This passage proves that for a character to learn, they must undergo shocking experiences, and in these experiences, they lose their innocence. Pie endured the experience with the goat and the tiger, and from it, he learned that a tiger isn't friendly, but quite the opposite. This passage included literary devices such as similes and repetition to further expand Pie's thoughts during this experience and stress the importance of it even more. The characters' personalities were tremendously exposed in this passage to make the scene more dramatic, as well as foreshadowing the major event of Pie stuck on a boat with a tiger. All these parts of the passage create a mood which is terrifying and adds suspense to the novel. This grabs the reader's attention and pushes them early on in the novel to continue reading till the